Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by the excellent Noffel. Noffel, how are you doing today?
I'm not doing bad, Curtis. Just trying not to die of hay fever.
Oh
How are you?
no. I'm sorry you're suffering. I didn't know. I had no idea. It's do you know what? I get it really badly. I go through like spells where I can't stop sneezing, and it literally ruins my day.
No, I literally woke up this morning and I felt like my eyes were glued shut. So hopefully, by the end of the show, I don't end up with extremely red eyes. So I'll try to survive.
Let's hope not. But let's get on with the show. Now, coming up tonight, Jews are not safe in Starmer's Britain, claims Israeli minister. The Co-op stops selling Israeli products, and the IDF admits deliberately killing unarmed Gazans. As always, remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. We'll, of course, be getting to comments at the end, so make sure you are very, very busy in the chat. But on to our first story. Keir Starmer has been accused of making Britain an unsafe place for Jewish people. Amichai Chikli accuses Labour government of being hostile, or being most hostile, Israel has ever known, claiming its base of supporters or voters are Hamas sympathisers. Oh, the irony. I'm sorry, the irony with this. Now, Chikli went as far as to call on Jewish people to leave the UK. British Jews should leave the UK unless the government changes, and the Labour Party is responsible for fueling anti-Semitism across the country. Without a dramatic change, of course, by Britain's political leadership, I see no future for Jewish life in England. Now, the reason for this insane outburst is because Labour put sanctions on two Israeli ministers, Ben Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. Apparently, this is anti-Semitic. Now, will the media engage in a mass hysteria campaign? Will they say there's an anti-Semitism crisis in the Labour Party? Are they going to wheel out Margaret Hodge so she can attack the leader? Will there be calls for an investigation? Now, Starmer, right, has done his utmost best to appease Israel, pretended there was a crisis under Corbyn and that he dealt with the issue. The problem is there wasn't a widespread issue to be dealt with, but the anti-Semitism crisis went away as soon as Labour became pro-Israel, which clearly wasn't enough. This is an example that any objection to Israel gets you labelled anti-Semitic. Noffel, it's hard to feel sorry for Starmer when he happily went along with the smears and kicked out all the socialists, but I want to get your reaction to this.
I think the gall to call a Labour Prime Minister who basically won through a coup via Morgan McSweeney and the Labour Together group, smearing Jeremy Corbyn as an anti-Semite, then sanctioning the most far-right politicians in the Israeli Knesset who openly call for the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, is now making it unsafe for Jewish people. Sorry, I don't quite understand it, and I think there is real danger here and I always say this, to say that Jewish people across the world, and especially in the UK, need to stand behind a systemic extermination of tens of thousands of civilians in Palestine, and that denying Israel's ability to do that is anti Semitic. Because we're already seeing the rendering down of the word anti Semitic. And my worry is when there's going to be real anti Semitism, the conflation that these politicians have created with anti Zionism and anti Semitism is actually going to create an unsafe space for Jewish people. So they're in the process of manufacturing consent for Israel, but they are actually throwing Jewish people under the bus who will later feel unsafe when they want to speak out against any real anti Semitism that they possibly face. And we see this with Candace Owens, we see this with Charlie Kirk, we see this with a host of different politicians on the right that are slowly weeding their rhetoric in to the UK, whom genuinely think there is a degree of Jewish control over the world. And just, I also want to state, I do find it somewhat funny that their projection of what could be a safe place for Jewish people in the UK would essentially look like a hostile environment for Muslims, pro-Palestinian activists, and an increased support for Israel. And we've seen Labour politicians like Luke Akehurst, for example, who is insanely pro-Israel, possibly create the political sphere for that. And I think that's what essentially people are looking towards to distract from this genocide that's happening in Gaza. But I think the word anti-Semitism is dangerously now becoming quite weak, and I think Jewish people genuinely are in danger, and Palestinians are going to be they're going to be just, you know, the genocide that's going on in Gaza is being distracted about. Sorry, I don't think I can hear you, Curtis.
I was actually on mute myself then. I don't usually do that. Schoolboy error. I think the weaponization of anti-Semitism has become the great McCarthyite campaign of our time. It started, I mean, it's always existed to some degree. We've got former Israeli ministers saying, oh, it's a trick we literally deployed to get people to stop criticizing Israel. But it really came to the forefront under Jeremy Corbyn, and it's sort of continued on since then. We've seen it with Zohran Mamdani's campaign in America, which he won his Democratic primary. And this is a widespread thing. I'm glad you brought up the likes of Charlie Kirk and specifically Candace Owens, because I think when you smear people as anti-Semitic who aren't anti-Semitic, one, it obviously trivializes it, but I think it increases it, because you'll get people on the right wing, far right, you get people like Candace Owens who only criticize Israel because they're anti-Semitic, and you're going to get people listen to them. You're going to get people who support the Palestinian movement, and I've seen it. I've seen people share the likes of Candace Owens because they might not know her very well politically, but will see her calling out Israel. And you're building that sort of legitimacy for the right wing when they call out Israel. When they call out Israel, it's far different to when we do it. It increases anti-Semitism. But I also think as well, there's an element within Zionism and Zionists is Islamophobia. And I think that you'll get the most reprehensible people, the most racist people, suddenly concerned with anti-Semitism. I mean, you're either an anti-racist or not, but for some reason it seems to be all right when you're right-wing. You can just, downplay all forms of anti-Semitism, all forms of racism apart from anti-Semitism. The same people that complain that London is becoming Muslimistan or whatever they bloody say, whatever. So I think at the heart of Zionism there is a Islamophobic play here as well, and I think that's part of why ministers in Israel want to see Gaza completely occupied, because they don't want Arabs in the region as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because I know you brought up Zohran Mamdani. The Islamophobic backlash he's been getting as of recently by the likes of the right in America is insane. They're talking about a second 9/11 coming. They're talking about a jihadist revolt coming. They're taking the words globalize the intifada as a Islamist supremacist movement. But it's also echoed here in the UK. With Jeremy Corbyn, he's a white man, yet his activism for Palestine got him smeared as a terrorist lover, right? Along with his diplomatic negotiations that he wanted between Northern Ireland and the Republicans and the separatists, etc., loyalists, etc., etc. However, what we've seen in real time with someone who actually is a Muslim is Moten Ali, who is the lead councillor for the Greens, and he ran on a pro-Palestine campaign. And Zionists came out the blue and they attacked him terribly. You even had the likes of Farage that went on. I can't remember. I think it was GB News or it might have been Talk TV. I can't remember. But he took a look at who was surrounding Moten Ali and he said, look, there's no women there. There's absolutely no women activists there. And Farage himself, though he doesn't speak much on Israel, when he does, he's in full support of Israel. He's like, yes, October the 7th was a tragedy, right? And Israel has the right to defend itself. So we are seeing the same tactics being played in the UK, because you're right, there is an element of Islamophobia, and it goes back to even, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the Corbyn era, where things like the Labour files and the Ford report found there was a disproportionate amount of focus within Labour MPs that were Muslim rather than actual Zionists. And I think it is because you have to manufacture consent for the state of Israel by throwing not just Jewish voices under the bus, because Corbyn did have a Jewish alliance backing him. He did genuinely have a monolith of opinions. He didn't just have a Zionist lobby. And at the same time, you have to create the scapegoat, which are Muslims or people that just love Muslims. So I think it's a really good point you made there. And I think it's only rising, especially within the UK, and we've seen with Mamdani as well.
But I think as well, I have no sympathy for Keir Starmer because this is kind of like you got what you're given. He played that game. Look, and absolutely no one has said on the left, no one in Corbyn's team said there was zero anti-Semitism. That's virtually impossible, right? Every political party is going to have it. What was the lie was this crisis that, Labour was specifically anti-Semitic, which is just not true. None of the numbers suggest that. All the research shows from what we have that it's not true. But Keir Starmer went along with that lie because he thought it was politically advantageous, but also it was a way to kick out the left. And he famously said, the Labour Party has changed. If you don't like it, there's the door. And it's funny now that once again, the Labour Party has been completely complicit in Israel's genocides, but they have obviously supported the ICC arrest warrants, or they've sanctioned Ben Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, right, on a personal capacity, by the way. They've done that, which I think is like the ultimate bare minimum. It's not even that, right?
Yeah.
And that gets labelled Keir Starmer someone who was hostile to Jews. I don't feel sorry for him because he did that game. And I tell you what, had even Jeremy Corbyn's critics who would say, I don't like his politics that much. But had they been honest, had Keir Starmer and others around him said, look, Jeremy Corbyn, his many things, he's not anti-Semitic. We've not seen evidence that Labour Party is harbours a large chunk of anti-Semitism. And had they took on the media smears on behalf of Jeremy Corbyn, despite their political disagreements, potentially we could have defeated this lie. Because obviously, if it was people like Margaret Hodge who said, no, it's not true, I don't like Jeremy, but that's not true, the media would have probably taken it more seriously. But they allowed it to happen, and now it's happening to them. And I just say, fuck them. You got what you sort of asked for.
Yeah, and just the last thing I want to say on it, I think it will just never be enough for Zionists. Trump isn't enough for Zionists. JD Vance isn't enough for a Zionist. Miriam Adelson, the big people that are funding and doing super PACs for Trump, aren't enough for Zionists. It will never be enough because Israel, as of right now, is increasing its capacity to systemically exterminate people, and it needs more and more support. So I think you're 100% right. You shouldn't lean into a little bit of the ability to let them manufacture consent for Israel, because they'll always throw you under the bus because their aim isn't to genuinely prop you up as their favorite democratic leader.
Quite right. Absolutely. But let's move on to our second story. The Co-op has banned the sale of Israeli products. The Co-op is to stop sourcing goods from Israel, Iran, and 15 other countries where it says there are international recognised rights abuses and violations of international law. The Mutual, which operates about 2,300 grocery stores in the UK, has drawn up a list of about 100 products affected by the change, including Israeli carrots and mangoes from Mali. Other countries covered by the ban, which will be gradually implemented from this month, include Russia, Syria, Belarus, Afghanistan, Myanmar, and Sudan. The Co-op said the ban would cover ingredients for its own label products as well as whole items. Now, the reason, the reason why the banning of Israeli products is the focus point here is because this is going against the grain of Western foreign policy. So I think that's quite significant. I think they've taken a brave stance. Now, the Co-op likes to pride itself on doing business ethically. The one major factor in this is that it's a co-op. Obviously, the clue is in the name. Now, members' position on the business aren't legally binding, but the culture is so much better when you have a level of democratic participation in the workplace. Novel. I mean, it's very good to see the Co-op is implementing this ban on multiple countries, including Israel, as I mentioned. Democracy within business is very important. And I think it's likely we wouldn't see these kinds of decisions without it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to take a look at the fact that this is democracy in action, essentially. It is quite literally from the bottom up ownership, because Co-op has a different public-private ownership when it comes to companies, and solutions that aim to just sanction Israel as a whole. And I think it also speaks to the political sphere right now, because it's not just individual institutions which are within the political sphere taking a look at what Israel is doing as a genocide. I think it's also your average person that is getting fed up with what Israel is doing, and it mimics a lot of what the South African apartheid movement was like, and what Co-op did in the late 2010s, again with Palestine and Gaza. And we get a lot of doomerism around our political institutions in what works, what doesn't work, who they stand up for, and who they don't stand up for. But this truly is democracy full on in action. And I think we need to remember that at the end of the day, we do have different representatives once every couple of years that we vote for. We do have people that we have to rely on. But when people take things into their own hands, they have the ability to go forward and make real changes.
Yeah, democracy tends to result in better decision making, right? And it's why it's fundamental to have democracy in the workplace, that businesses are run and owned cooperatively. And there's a word for that, isn't there? It's called socialism. I think we've lost Noffel. Just the exciting bit when we were talking about socialism. Okay, I'm going to go on and explain what I was talking about. We have an ever-growing oligarchy, and I think now is the time to talk about socialist businesses and a democratic economy. I think with the rise of the far right, we always say the rise of the far right as if they're just rising. They're coming, right? They're already kind of here. They're established, right? That the point isn't to sort of he's back now. I'll finish my point. The point isn't to be timid, right? I think the time for centre-left politics is kind of over. We need to be talking about democracy in the workplace and a democratic economy. One, because it's the right thing to do. But two, with the rise of AI, the rentier economy, and the far right, who, by the way, do not capitulate and water down their message, I think only radical politics and socialism is the genuine answer. Not just from a moralistic or correct point of view, but I think as a strategic point of view as well.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to when we take a look at what systems are currently run. It is democracy, but who is it democracy for? And who owns our ability to make the decisions in our institutions? And like I said before, there is a lot of focus and emphasis on, with not bad necessarily channels, but things like electoralism, things like relying on people who are in parliament, without understanding there are mechanisms that exist under our current system, which means that even if you are well intentioned, power will get to you sometimes, money will get to you sometimes. However, the difference that we have as working class people is we don't have the same relation to all these different things in society as those who represent us. And I think Chomsky said it really well. And he said that if you create a system in which the individual doesn't have the ability to make democratic decisions in the economy, the individual doesn't have the ability to make democratic decisions in what their community looks like, then who is it really a democracy for? Because it's not a democracy for you. It's not a democracy for me. In fact, the system that came about wasn't one that was voted on democratic choice. It came about because we were shifting from feudalism to capitalism. And so we have to ask ourselves, if systemic change is different, if these different systems do benefit individuals and different classes, then maybe it is time to look at creating a message, a populist message, right, which puts forward radical change and puts forward real material difference to your average person.
I mean, capitalism, in my view anyway, it is ending. It's not about, because I stopped calling myself an anti-capitalist. I call myself a post-capitalist now, because it no longer makes sense to say anti-capitalist, because we're not fighting to bring down capitalism. Capitalism is absolutely ending. I think we're going to go into some kind of techno-feudalism. And the point of us on the left is to say, capitalism is ending, make a choice. Do you want to continue where power is continually concentrated in a handful of the few? Or do you say, look, we're facing multiple crises under capitalism. These crises are going to carry over in the next system. We need to have a revolution that isn't the bourgeois revolution, because obviously capitalism that grew out of feudalism was a bourgeoisie revolution. We need to have, in the history of the world, potentially, the first ever working class revolution. So it's about where we're going next rather than bringing down the current system.
Yeah, and I think just one last thing, what has happened with the co-op specifically shows that workers do have the capability to make those decisions. It is about political choice. When parties, when politicians, when our governments that represent different countries like Israel and corporations that do trade with Israel say, you know what, we can't sanction settlers. We can't actually stop products coming in from here. It's too hard. We can't find where the products are. We need to uphold F-35 parts to allow for peace and to use the supply chain against Russia. It shows that these are just excuses, and we have the ability to make those decisions on our own. And what the government does, and along with these different corporations and these politicians, is give us excuse after excuse after excuse, and we shouldn't allow them to take us for mugs. We should be honest and know we know exactly what's going on, because if we were in charge, we would be able to make those decisions. And this is just another example of neglecting away from that sort of doomerism that, the left isn't doing anything, workers can't do anything. But it shows in practice we can absolutely have a situation in which we make the right decisions for us and for everyone else around the globe.
I mean, speaking of socialism, it feels like a good time to plug ourselves. So if you're enjoying the stream, then please like and subscribe. Just to remind viewers that we are 5 volunteers. We do not get paid for this work, but one day we would love for this to be our full-time jobs. And we'll get there, by the way. So if you can, then consider becoming a supporter by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you could become you could become a monthly patron, or there is another link for a one-off donation. Of course, you can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. We really, really want to have a studio to be able to afford one. It'd be fantastic. We'll have a consistent quality show. There'll be more interviews, podcasts, you name it. We can do so much more, but we are aiming to reach an income of £1,500 per month. So again, if you can support us, then please consider doing it. But let's move on to our final story of the evening. The IDF has admitted to gunning down innocent Palestinians who were trying to access aid. Israeli soldiers in Gaza told Haaretz that the army has deliberately fired at Palestinians near aid distribution sites over the past month. Conversations with officers and soldiers reveal that commanders ordered troops to shoot at crowds to drive them away or disperse them, even though it was clear they posed no threat. One soldier admitted, "We open fire early in the morning if someone tries to get in line from a few hundred meters away, and sometimes we just charge at them from close range. But there's no danger to the forces." Now, there's also a profit motive for Israel to murder innocent Palestinians. Today, any private contractor working in Gaza with engineering equipment receives $5,000, which is roughly $1,500 shekels for every house they demolish, said a veteran fighter. They're making a fortune. From their perspective, any moment where they don't demolish houses is a loss of money, and the forces have to secure their work. The contractors, who act like a kind of sheriff, demolish wherever they want along the entire front. In order for the contractors to protect themselves, a shooting incident breaks out and people are killed. These are areas where Palestinians are allowed to be. We're the ones who moved closer and decided they endangered us. So for a contractor to make another 5,000 shekels and take down a house, it's deemed acceptable to kill people who are only looking for food. Now, the next paragraph is absolutely disgusting. This is one soldier talking about the attitude they have within the distribution centres. Activity in his area of service is referred to as Operation Salted Fish, the name of the Israeli version of the children's game Red Light, Green Light. Now, if you don't know the game Red Light, Green Light, it's in reference to a game played in the TV show Squid Game, where players have to run across to the other side of the field, faced with guns that kill. If they are caught moving on the red light, they are gunned down. Now, the horror does not end there. Opioid pills discovered in US-backed food aid. The Gaza Government Media Office on Friday condemns the discovery of oxydome pills reportedly discovered in flour bags distributed by American Israeli aid centres. We have so far documented 4 testimonies from citizens who found these pills inside the flour bags, it said in a statement, warning of the possibility that some of these narcotic substances were deliberately ground or dissolved in the flour itself. Palestinian pharmacist Omar Hamad described the discovery of the pills as the most despicable form of genocide. Now, I would love to see any Zionist try and defend this or say that it's a lie, which there absolutely will be people doing that. Novel, the more time goes on, the more we find out how sick and twisted Israel is. I want to get your thoughts on this piece.
They're open about all of it and they're not lying, and they have not been from the start. If you take a look at the statements that were provided in the lead up to this, the ones that were provided by the South African ICJ case, they collected over 300 individual statements from Israeli politicians detailing exactly what they wanted to do, what they would do, while our Western politicians decided to create cover for them and essentially make it out as if it was all about October the 7th. That's why we constantly heard, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn October 7th for the first couple months? And in relation to these aid trappings, especially the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it was also never set up at all to be something that was genuinely there to help Palestinians, unlike most conflicts, right? There was a video that the Netanyahu office had released, I believe, on the 19th of May. And he essentially described the fact that the horrific images that were coming out of Gaza was so bad that the aid plan was essentially needed to act as some sort of humanitarian intervention so they could continue the systemic execution of Palestinians, right? And so when you hear Smotrich backing that as well, essentially saying, well, and this is his words, people can look it up, but Smotrich essentially said, as reported by Jeremy Scahill from Dropsite News, that what's happening with the aid traps or aid plans or whatever you want to call them will act as an international umbrella that the US provides to stop the Israeli government ministers from being tried at The Hague. I mean, that's just quite an insane statement to say. It's not what the West portrays as some sort of war, some sort of two-sided conflict where Palestinian civilians are just caught in the crossfire. We're talking about deliberate whitewashing and the inability to cover for these deranged politicians to further their career, and ignoring international statements made by the United Nations on this, this weird aid plan, because the media has not covered essentially what the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation really is, because it's not this aid plan that's been accepted by the international community. It's got Blackwater mercenaries in it. It's not got any neutral standing or principles behind it. The mercenary contracts are linked to a ex-CIA personnel operator. And on top of that, there's good evidence to suggest from independent journalism that the Israeli government was actually funding this foundation. They found money that was going out of the government to set this up. And I think when Israel was pressed on it, they admitted to this. So all of this combined, there are different instances of how this was a deliberate choice. But all we're ever told, miles away from Israel, is that this is all just some two-sided cross-conflict in which people are just getting caught in the middle of it, and it's not deliberate at all.
I mean, it's hard to tell from those testimonies from the soldiers whether they were gloating or whether they were like, look, this is actually really bad, but we kind of have to keep our heads down. I don't know in that particular instance, but what we do know is there has been so much gloating of the sort of behavior that the IDF does. And it's got to the point now where, okay, Israel still continues to lie. Of course they do, right? But it's got to the point where it's not even trying to cover for the crimes of Israel and the IDF. I mean, they're just showing it off. I mean, you don't need to open TikTok for very long and you'll see a video of an IDF soldier committing a war crime, doing something despicable. I've seen videos of IDF soldiers going into Palestinian houses and putting on underwear of Palestinian women they just slaughtered dancing around, stuff like that. They don't care. So it's plausible, because when I first read this article, it felt like I was reading some sort of kind of, I don't know, they felt guilty about it, or at least they knew it was wrong, and it was kind of like being a whistleblower. But now thinking about it, I don't know if these guys are just absolutely gloating about it. Now you notice, or it's very much noted, that the Palestinian pharmacist Omar Hamad, he described the discovery of the pills as the most despicable form of genocide. And we have people on Piers Morgan, GB News, Talk TV, still trying to both sides this, still trying to say, well, okay, the IDF shooting at Palestinians at aid trucks is because they were provoked. I mean, how can you try and sort of lie your way out of opium being crushed up and put in flowers? Did Hamas do that? So it gets to the point now where they kind of have to go, yeah, do you know what? We are doing it and we don't care. Because there's no way you can try and twist that in a different way.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the complete hypocrisy of the international system that we helped create after World War II, that we said never again. Those words almost ring meaningless now.
Absolutely meaningless.
If we are so technologically advanced, Israel's subsidized by the American taxpayer to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. They have all this advanced weaponry that can target people, and your main way of essentially doing this disgusting genocide, or one of the ways that we found, is now opioids within food. I mean, it's just cynical. You must think that someone must have purposely wanted to do this because they wanted genuine harm. Not even the military operation of genuinely going out and ethnically cleansing Palestinians, but they wanted genuine harm just for the sake of it, because this is what it really feels like. However, it's not new. It's not new. It's an old trick in the books of colonialism, that you do have the general idea of a systemic extermination, but along the environment that you create, the dehumanization of Palestinians, the words like vermin, the idea that they are Arab colonialists, right? You will have a large amount of Israeli society and the military institutions that are the IDF that genuinely hate Palestinians, and they want to do whatever they can to harm them. I mean, you talked about the demolition of houses for profit, right? And there's a lot of contractors that will go out and they'll do it because they want settlements. And that itself is unrelated to the genocide. That's just a broader Zionist project, which is based off the hate of Palestinians and settler colonialism. So it's not new by any means. What makes it worse is the fact it's live streamed. It's a live streamed Holocaust, and the fact that we have the ability to target if you wanted to, right? To play the liberal Zionist playbook. If you wanted to go after Hamas, you could have, but you haven't. You've gone majorly after civilians. So I think it's a real expose for most people, for most of us that haven't had to live through colonial times, to understand what exactly that looks like and the environment that you create for dehumanizing the people that you're subject to ethnically cleansing.
The most moral army in the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's leave that there. And we're going to go to our producer for your comments tonight. Joining us, we've got Lewis Aaron. Lewis, how are we?
Clear my throat there. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, obviously, interesting show so far. Hello, everybody. I have just been catching up on Israeli media to see the responses today from, obviously, because obviously this is basically a Gaza-focused video, pretty much. And in the last hour, this is reported on by Israeli media that one of the Gaza police units confiscated a bunch of aid off of a group who was looting, and they started handing it out to Palestinians for free, because obviously there were gangs who get the aid and then try and sell it. So this police unit got the loot, gave it out to Palestinians. They were handing it out for free, and because they are Hamas police, Israel just airstrike them all. That's been reported in the Times of Israel about 20 to 30 minutes ago. So you essentially cannot win. You can't win. If you buy it off of a gang, if you've got the money, you can get airstrikes because the gang are evil. If you get it off the Hamas, the police, they're also targets. So you get airstriked, and if you go to an aid distribution center right now, you risk being put essentially into the Squid Games.
Well, I mean, the aid distribution center is basically target practice for the IDF.
Yeah.
It's actually a big sort of massive sign saying, hey, come and bomb us. So Palestinians cannot win. They do everything they do everything they're told to by Israel, and then they're attacked anyway. Because as Knopfel pointed out, this isn't about anything else apart from wiping every single Palestinian off the face of the earth.
And just to clarify one thing, I had to run away for 2 minutes while I was producing, so I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but the way the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation works, which, by the way, is Israeli controlled and funded, is that they post on Facebook every single day of what time you can come and collect aid. It's usually a 1 hour window. That is it. If you get there early or if you get there after it closes, you are subject, according to this Haaretz report that you've talked about today, you are subject to being killed. Most people can't access Facebook, so they don't actually have the access times. And what's been happening is that the IDF have been saying, oh, no, this is the time you're supposed to come. And then the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation post online saying, this is the time that you're supposed to come. And then people are turning up at the wrong times because of this miscommunication, and then they are being massacred. And again, that is straight from Israeli media. So
that's one of the things the United Nations pointed out, was that there will be complete impartiality in this sort of aid program, right? But there was no sufficient pressure from any Western government that talked about the possible risk of breaching international law to provide a UN-backed plan, and that's simply because Israel doesn't want aid getting out. Like you said, Lewis, they bombed the ability to even give it out via that gang. So you can't win. You're right, you can't.
And just before we come to the comments of the day, I just want to add, and I know people who watch us are smarter than this anyway, but don't let anyone fall for the propaganda about the quote-unquote amount of meals that they are distributing every day, because that's the terminology that they are using. Because a lot of the food that they're giving out, they're counting it in the number of meals that food can produce. A lot of the equipment needed to create the food and make the food that they need with the ingredients that they have, they don't have access to that. They're being given ingredients that they don't have the tools to cook with. They don't have ovens or heat sources. They're being given dried beans in some instances, and they don't have clean water to soak the beans or even boil them. So don't believe the propaganda when Israel is saying this is how many meals has been given out, because it's not true. Because the Palestinian Authority released a video 2 hours ago of 2 children dying of malnutrition. And that's the 5th case that I've seen this week of children dying of malnutrition this week in Gaza. Sorry, guys, I know this is a heavy episode, but it has to be focused on.
To be honest, this is a heavy story. So to be fair, today has all been about Israel anyway. So you can't really speak about this story not being incredibly heavy.
Right, let's go through some of the comments. We'll start from the top. So going back to Starmer, Alice, player said, damn, they really used his own move against him.
No sympathy.
Yeah, I can't get over this. There will be some irony if Starmer's downfall is somehow linked to the idea that he's not supportive of Israel enough. It'll be some
wild stuff,
twisted irony.
It would be kind of some kind of sick sort of justice and full circle, right? I feel like even though it would continue this McCarthyite campaign, I think some of us deep down would be like, fucking hell, if he was going to go for anything though, it's funny that it's this. I certainly would, in a really, really selfish and childish way. I would feel like, do you know what? Fuck it. Everything's fucked. Can I just not have a win? And if Starmer's brought down because he's not sufficiently pro-Israel enough, I will certainly celebrate.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Just to point out, the guy who's in the head of the Friends of the head of the Labour Friends of Israel. God, I can't get my words out. John Pierce, he went to Israel at the end of March and wrote an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post saying that the Labour Friends of Israel oppose the ICC arrest warrant, oppose the weapons, the arms sales being restricted, and celebrated how much the UK government is cracking down on pro-Palestinian protesters. And that was at the end of March. And then only, a few months later, we've got the Israeli government saying that Starmer's the worst PM for Israel. It's just
Labour Friends of Israel are the most disgusting group out there. They are absolutely full of disgusting, horrible people.
Jim Speak's been having a little chat in the co-op. So, mate, I was just talking to a co-op checkout worker, grey-haired chap. He agreed Israel need to be pressured, and so did even the older lady in the queue behind me.
Based.
Yeah, I know the co-op is a bit more expensive, guys. I've got one just outside my house. I only get certain things from there, but if you want to go in and reward co-op,
Do you know what? It used to be really cheap. There was when I was living in Bristol, there was a local co-op. We used to always go there because it was like the prices were competitive. I'm sure the prices have gone up, but I tell you what, sometimes if you've got a bit more money, you can maybe splash out in a slightly more expensive shop. Certainly, I think at least going to an organisation that is partly democratic. It's not legally binding, but it's got a nice little sort of democratic will inside it.
Yeah,
I think if you can support co-op, then do it.
Yeah, I ran out.
They got good sandwiches as well.
I ran out of cat litter a few months ago, right? And I live. You've been in my flat, Curtis. I live next to a Co-op and a Sainsbury's. Went down to the Sainsbury's and saw that they only had the branded one, the cat sand one, and it was like £9. And I was like, I'm not paying £9. Went to the Co-op, same bag, £13. So I went back to the Sainsbury's because obviously I had to get some cat litter for my cat. £13 for cat litter, but maybe buy something else, guys. Buy something.
Yeah,
else.
maybe not cat litter, but to be fair, I feel like the meal deals of Co-op has been elite. Right.
Meal deals are good. So Starmer didn't want anyone with a political conscience in the Labour Party. Now he doesn't want anyone with a humanitarian conscience to be free on the streets. How far do the bigots want him to go? Did you guys also see that the Palestine Action people got arrested today, 4 of them?
Yeah.
On the same day that all these reports come out. Absolutely wild. By the way, when you muted yourself, Curtis, I kind of noticed this. Sorry to point this out, but did you have a little cheeky...
I was muting to cough.
Okay.
And also, the other... was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday, I think I slept funny. I've got a massive twinge in my neck, so my back kind of hurts. So I'm constantly moving because I'm really tight. So no, I didn't fart though. Thank you, Lewis. And even if I did fart, I would lie and say I coughed. So who knows what actually happened?
I fart so much on stream, so it's fine.
Do you on stream?
Well, I'll mute myself or something like that. I'll pretend to cough.
Thanks for that, and I'm sure the audience will absolutely love that.
Absolutely. We should normalise farting. It's a human thing. This is going to end up with an emergency law passing banning boycotts, I bet. Yeah, follow America.
See that.
I mean, they tried that in the US, didn't they? Where they talked about possibly banning boycotting. So if the Labour government is crazy enough to do that, I could see it happen.
Well, I mean, and on that in America, wouldn't they even trying to make it criminal? So like you could even face some kind of jail sentence for it. I'm sure I saw something like that.
Some states have passed laws about boycotts. But I've never actually looked into surely that should be protected under the First Amendment, surely.
Yeah, but since when the government has actually given a shit about the Constitution? I mean, actually, the biggest the people who talk about the Constitution the most are ones that are most likely to break it.
I mean, they were wanting to reassess the naturalized citizen amendment. Yeah. And what was the other one, I believe? The justification given for deporting or withholding certain Palestinian activists was they're just anti-Semitic. So it was against the First Amendment anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Well, I've just read as well in the last few hours. Do you guys remember at the halftime Super Bowl show, the last one, where the guy ran out onto the field with the Free Palestine Free?
Yeah.
They just charged him. Even though that happened in the last administration, they've gone out of their way to charge him. I just saw that in the news in the last couple of hours. They really, really, really want to go after these people. Jacqueline, I like this. I'm now waiting for the co-op to be described by Yvette Cooper.
Oh, do you know what? If that would happen, I feel like that would be the end of the Labour government, though, wouldn't it? Because people are like, what the fuck? A supermarket been prescribed? But then we're all laughing about it. But who knows in fucking 10 years' time if Reform's in power, they're prescribing bloody co-op. Oh, honestly, nothing surprises me.
Did you mention in your readout about the percentage of the vote?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't have that. What? Do you know it?
I just wanted to double check. I'm pretty sure it was 74% of members. 74, I'm pretty sure. It was definitely over 70%, but I think the number.
Do you know how many members of the co-op there are in this country?
No idea. because it's not just a case of how many members there are. It'll be about the amount of people who are actually active within that vote as well. So I'm not sure if we have that information.
Yeah,
But maybe we
true.
do somewhere. And then Carl put socialism because it makes sense.
It does. It just makes sense.
Hmm.
And then Tic Tac, I'm releasing a pro-Palestinian song soon. Will I be banned or arrested? Probably.
Both. You'll be demonetized. They'll pull the video, and then you'll be behind bars. I don't think that's going to stop you though, Andrew, is it?
I like I signed up to those updates for the pro-Israel lobby groups that I follow. I got one today, which was they're trying to go after is it Dundee Town Hall or something like that. They flew the Palestinian flag, and they were saying that it was scaring all the Jewish people in Dundee.
Oh my
Dundee
God.
Town Hall.
Look, I'm sorry, but if you're a
was
Jewish
Dundee.
person that's scared of a Palestinian flag, that's a you problem. That is a you problem. I'm sorry, but it is. It's a flag but that's the thing though. It's first of all, a lot of Jewish people aren't scared about it. It's once again probably non-Jewish people trying to describe the feelings of Jewish people when it comes to Palestine. Because like when Zionists talk, right, majority of them are fucking Christian.
Yeah.
And then they want to talk about anti-Semitism. It's like, well, what stake do you have in it? Like, I understand. Like, I don't have a stake in it. I'm not Jewish. But neither do a lot of Zionists.
By the way, it was We Believe in Israel who were the biggest proponent of getting Palestine Action banned. Just FYI.
Oh, well, that's formerly Luke Akehurst's territory.
Yeah.
I looked up his speeches a couple of days ago in Parliament. He's been trying to push this since about March.
Of course he has. I fucking hate that guy so much. He's such a prick.
Jacqueline, so the orders were to drive them away or disperse them. So why did the soldiers take that to mean kill them? So one of the quotes, because obviously there's so many quotes that Curtis couldn't include them all. If I remember correctly, there was one guy who said that we weren't instructed to use any form of crowd control. We weren't instructed to use tear gas or anything like that. One of the quotes was, "Our only communication was gunfire." That's what we were told. We were told to use mortars. We were told to use heavy machinery against these people, and that was their instructions from their commanders. And just to follow up as well, Benjamin Netanyahu has said this is blood libel, what Haaretz has done in their expose. And it's worth noting that in November, Haaretz hosted some sort of event in London. I can't remember what it was, but they weren't happy with the wording that Haaretz used, and the government actually sanctioned Haaretz. And now they're saying it's blood libel. I would expect within the next few weeks, the Israeli government will be doing something else to go.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
I mean, it's straight up out of a playbook for what every single government has done when they commit genocide, right? Germans in the 40s famously were talking about how it was actually the Bolshevik genocide that was going on. Ignore what we're doing in the Warsaw Ghetto and all these other parts of Eastern occupied Europe. I think it's just totally insane. And especially, I don't like to make comparisons towards other genocides that much, but the idea of using specifically heavy artillery and bullets was something that was very present in Eastern occupied Europe in the ghettos in which Jewish people were in. So, I mean, I only think about my knowledge on World War II history sometimes when I think about this. And it's just disgusting. It is a repeat of what we've seen.
You are bang on. There are so many parallels to, and I know people feel uncomfortable saying it, and I understand that, but I no longer care. There is so many parallels to the Holocaust. Now, of course, people turn around and say that's offensive because 6 million Jews were killed. And I refer back to, especially when people say it's not a genocide because there's more Palestinians than before, I refer back to the fact that the definition of genocide isn't the amount of people you killed, it's the intent. So you can only kill 2,000 people. Well, I mean, it's, every life is equal, right? But what I mean is in terms of like the numbers, it's not as much as 6 million people, right? But it's the intent. So that's why I draw the comparisons. At the end of the day, I say these words because I think I want to provoke provocation now, because at the end of the day, words and language will never, ever be as offensive than killing children, starving people, and now drugging them and getting them addicted to opioids, not because they want them addicted, but because they want them to feel pain. Because when the drug wears off, the pain, actually, it's not just the pain it kills. If you don't get your next fix when it comes to opioids, you can just die. So it's killing them, but slowly, in the most disgusting, torturous way possible.
Yeah,
100%.
it's and also we'll probably never get that story fully confirmed in the sense of independently tested. This is Israel's fault. Let's just say the story wasn't exactly what it is, right? It's something else. Let's say it's drug smuggling. Israel are setting themselves up to be blamed for this, even though that I wouldn't put this past them because they don't allow other journalists in. They don't allow any other independent thing. And this is what I think it was was it a BBC journalist or a Sky journalist recently who literally said this to I think it was it the British Israeli diplomat where she'd have said all this is lies, and they were just basically like, we can't prove any of this. All we can do is go off of the reports that are coming out of the people in Gaza, because you will not allow us to independently verify this. So every accusation, we report on it, and we can't independently verify it. So when you're saying they're lying, we're still going to report on this because you won't allow us in. So we're not going to not talk about it, which I thought was a good point. I can't remember who it was.
Very good point.
But yeah, I thought I'd highlight this because Tic Tac said, like, how can we even donate now to aid that will actually get through? Well, you can't, essentially, because they have called the UNRWA group and passed it through legislation as a terrorist organization. But what I would recommend that you do is find any organization that you can that supports Palestinians in different ways. You can go and donate to charities that support them, set up a monthly thing. You could even, there's some Israeli organizations like B'Tselem. There's other organizations like WAFA, which is like journalism within the occupied territories. There are so many different ways that you can kind of support this. It's not necessarily just about donating for food and aid, because you can't guarantee where that's going to go because of the current situation, but you can support other systems.
There is a rather cheap alternative as well, just based off what you were talking about, where people can buy eSIMs. There's a lot of eSIM charities, because as the people's Wi-Fi keeps getting destroyed, they're having to rely, unfortunately, on mobile data and on using their phones, and it's just disgusting. I mean, the amount of times I watch a video on social media and there's genuinely Palestinians in the comments begging for food and water, it's extremely sick. So if anyone wants a cheap way in order to help people, there's an ability to buy eSIMs, and then therefore they can maybe campaign on their own to help get aid through like GoFundMe's and whatnot.
So we got a donation a few minutes ago from my pal Footfoot. Can't we prescribe Likud and the IDF? Only in our dreams. But you know what's a fun fact? The 12th Prime Minister of Israel was a guy called, I was just double checking his name, Ehud Olmert. He was a head of one of the terrorist organizations before the independence of Israel called Lehi, or Lehi, I think it's pronounced. They were prescribed a terrorist organization even by the state of Israel after it was created. They tried to, well, no, they did. They successfully killed British diplomats. They sent bombs through the post to Winston Churchill and lots of other people. They carried out insane massacres, and they were prescribed a terrorist organization. And then after the state of Israel, a few years after the state of Israel, they were given clemency. And then a few decades later, they had streets and buildings named after them because they declared that it was necessary for them to carry out these terrorist attacks in the state of the creation of Israel. And their leader was then elected the 12th Prime Minister of Israel. He was a prescribed terrorist, ahead of the worst Zionist terrorist organization that existed at the time. Just a fun little fact. Sorry,
which happened in the British Mandate as well.
Yeah.
It happened even before.
Yeah.
Which is insane to think about.
Yeah. So Guitar Guy gifted 5 memberships, so thank you very much, Guitar Guy. And also Specs Bean Farmer. Always love that name.
Yeah, good. I love the name. It makes me laugh. I have no idea what it means, but it's funny.
Either.
It's great. It's a great name.
Okay. Let me see if I can go find more comments, because we did have lots and lots of comments today, but we just had a lot of kind of reactions, basically, because obviously what we were covering was
so shocking. Yeah.
So shocking.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can quickly, obviously, find anything else. Because obviously some stuff might have come through. Oh, we've got people arguing in the comments. How lovely. Yeah, there's just a lot of discussion in the chat. Nothing that I can really find right now. So I think that is it for comments right now. I'll put this up quickly. Do you condemn this?
I'll tell you what, at the beginning of the next show, we're going to start off with Do You Condemn Co-op? You'll hear Piers Morgan on his new show. I just want to start off with Do You Condemn Co-op? Yeah.
I just saw this actually and it's completely unrelated, but yeah. So technically, I've seen a lot of people saying this today, and there was a big discussion about it in the chat. So he hasn't actually got rid of birthright nationality. The Supreme Court ruled that federal judges can't block things nationwide. So therefore, the current case about Trump trying to get rid of birthright citizenship means it can go ahead until that case is discussed by the Supreme Court. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did I explain that
Yeah.
right?
In the duration the case is going on,
Yeah.
it's able to be done. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it's crazy though, because it might actually indicate that the Supreme Court might actually let Trump actually get rid of birthright citizenship, because they could have blocked it in the meantime and they chose not to. So very scary times over in the US. I'm sure we'll cover that when it happens in the future. Yeah, not really much more to add into the comments. Everyone's discussing, everyone's shocked. We had a very active comment section today, and a lot of people are just, so much to consume regarding this news.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of sometimes keep it light on a Friday.
Not today.
Sometimes, not today. But you can't choose a story. Well, I do choose the stories, but you can't choose what happens in the world, and it's our duty to report on some of these things. But it's I don't know if you guys feel this, right? But I think a couple of weeks, a couple of months after October 7th, I was really angry. Now it's almost hard to get angry at these stories. It just sort of passes me by. I don't really have an emotion towards it anymore. I think sometimes when I sit with it and think about it, I get quite angry. But I think I'm just never surprised.
Yeah.
Because what we're discussing today, in a month's time, we're probably going to find out something else which is even more sickening.
Yeah.
And we've all been so desensitized to it.
I think it's just because there's no pressure from our governments. They're just sitting idly by, and sometimes it genuinely does feel helpless. Helpless.
Yeah, it's really frustrating as well, because I was reading the EU are actively actually trying to put sanctions on Israel right now. They're trying to potentially suspend the trade agreements, but the issue is because of the way that obviously the system works, is that people are blocking it, including Hungary and Germany. But actually, I was reading yesterday that Hungary actually made some concessions, and they were potentially going to let it go ahead because they found some sort of concession, but Germany's still blocking it as well. And that now because of this maneuver that Hungary pulled, essentially their foreign minister just left, and therefore they couldn't vote. There's not going to be another meeting now for another 3 weeks. So they just keep pulling all these political moves to keep delaying the sanctions. But there is actually a wide consensus. The EU do want to do this, but at the same time, because the system works the way it works, the majority is actually not getting what they want, which is very frustrating. But no Western government has still really taken any concrete action. There's nothing out there that has actually happened which will make any difference. Sanctioning the 2 Israeli ministers doesn't actually change anything. The only thing that our governments can wield, which can actually have an effect, is economic stuff. You could sanction all the ministers. It won't change anything because all the sanctioning does is just stop them from potentially accessing finances and traveling to certain places, yada, yada, yada. But most of these people are smart enough to know that they're going to get sanctioned, and they've already got all those things sorted out and ready to go just in case it happens. So the only way that we can do it is economically pressure Israel, the state itself, in every single possible way that we can. And no one's doing that anytime soon, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, so. But I think in some parts of some Arab regions and other Muslim countries, there has been like more increased amounts of like boycotts of companies like McDonald's and whatnot. So there is the ability to do that. It's also just the political will of the people wherever they live. So
yeah, did you guys just because I'm trying to fill in the last few minutes, did you guys actually see the story about Trump trying to support Benjamin Netanyahu getting out of his corruption trial? Did you see?
Well, I saw his. I don't know how you call it. Is it? It was on Truth Social. Does he call it a truth? Does he call it
a truth? I think
a truth, right?
Which is the most 1984 thing ever.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, I genuinely think Netanyahu or Israel has something on Trump, because you know that video where he was like, they don't know what the fuck they're doing against Iran and Trump. All right, he was really angry at Israel. Iran and Trump, Iran and Israel. Yeah, he's really angry at Israel. And then that truth, that post he put out was so pathetically fawning over him. He's a hero. He's been persecuted. I'm like, wow. And I just think there must be something on Trump because he completely did a 180. I don't know what 180 is. Not exactly he ever
I'm going to do
criticised
the
Netanyahu.
Occam's razor thing here. It's much simpler than that. My prediction, based off of what I understand, is that Trump needs trade and he needs money. An Israeli minister was quoted saying, but again, it was anonymous in Israeli media yesterday, that Trump posting that out when he did was purposeful. And it's part of some sort of essentially quid pro quo. I think it was also reported that he made Netanyahu agree to end the war in 2 weeks, which probably won't happen, but that was probably a concession given so he would bomb Iran, essentially. I think, and a lot of people think, that America wants the minerals that were recently found in Iran.
Yeah.
Because China cut them off. And these specific minerals and whatever it is, materials, are needed in very specific military uses, and America has no access to them, essentially, or little access to them globally, and Iran's just found an absolute shit ton. I think. And also, he's trying to convince Israel and other countries to drop sanctions on Iran. And now there's news coming out that the US is going to help fund a £30 billion nuclear facility that's going to be closely monitored for nuclear energy in Iran. All this weird shit is coming out over the last 24, 48 hours. It seems there has been some quid pro quo. So Trump can get something and Netanyahu can get something, which is getting out of his trial.
I completely accept the Occam's razor. I usually abide by that rule. But I think all of that is true. But there probably is something on Trump because it's Trump. I mean, the guy hangs around with Epstein. So,
Bojo said in his book, didn't he, Boris Johnson, that, again, he could just be saying shit like this or borrowing a story from somewhere else just to sell a book. But he said that after Benjamin Netanyahu visited him in was it like a hotel room or something like that? I can't remember. They found a bug in the room after Benjamin Netanyahu left. That's what Boris Johnson put in his book. So, this is what states do, especially Israel. They're very good at this.
Yeah, blackmail is not new for them. It's a repeated tactic. They had a whole blackmail. Covert operation part of the military set up in the late 70s. So
they're gonna have a minister for blackmail soon because they'll be so fucking open about it. Well, we blackmail each other.
Someone in Netanyahu's team is literally being investigated right now for blackmail around the timeline of October 7th and what happened on that morning. So, another fun fact there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it today for the comments, guys. So I'm gonna jump back to the split screen and
thank you very much, Lewis. That is, of course, all we have time for. Thank you to our viewers who tuned in, of course, and I want to thank Noffel for joining me tonight. Remember, please like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. Very heavy stories today, but I do wish you a fantastic weekend. I hope the weather's going to be nice. I mean, it looks like it's going to rain where I'm at in Leeds. I don't know about you guys. But once again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.